We are here today with my colleague Steve. He's coached over 12 years in basketball, and he's had a very successful career so far, winning numerous championships at the high school level. And we're here to talk about specifically about coaches and how they build relationship with their athletes. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, so let's just start off right at the bat and talk about. Can you think back into your high school or even your university days of a coach or maybe two coaches that had an impact on you to make you the coach you are today?
Definitely, Jim. I've had lots of coaches over my career, and think back to a couple of coaches, and they both had very different learning styles, very different approaches, and one was fundamentals, great strict fundamentals, but we learned with fear. This is in the early 70s, and in those days you could get hit, so you learned with fear, and we did.
And that was still a winning strategy, though.
It was a winning strategy, and we were champions, but I didn't feel that good about myself because I was scared all the time. When I was on the court or off the court, I had a great respect for this man, but it was fear motivated.
And it was all about winning.
Yes, it was.
Right.
Yeah. Now, compared to a coach I had a bit later in my career who came at quite a different approach, and his approach was more about motivation and positive feedback and building team character and building team relationships and getting us to work as a unit. So he spent a fair amount of time on the court and off the court doing activities and drills and different stuff that would get us to work together.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that getting together or that relationship building aspects that he put in place?
Well, we did different stuff. Like one nutty thing we did is there was this old car at our school, and we would break up into 4 teams, and we would time each other pushing this vehicle around the gym, and it had nothing to do with basketball. We would physically push this car around the gym, and it was a great activity just to get everybody working together. And we'd do that, and we'd go bowling, or he'd even take us water skiing. But on trips, we'd be on the school bus, or we would be on an airplane going to the States for basketball tournaments or whatever. We'd always do branch off activities from there, and we'd always be all together. And he would also spend individual time with us, getting to know us, talking to us, and figuring out. He was always figuring out, okay, how we worked and which people would work best together on the court.
So, in terms of these coaching styles, as a coach today, what coaching style do you take on more? Or I guess, have you seen yourself adopt some of these, or how are they intertwined, and what do you take more of in terms of your coaching style these days?
Well, definitely these days, I definitely take the latter approach, and have always done that and built upon that as much as I could.
Do you think there's a space for that first coach that you talked about, that I guess dictatorship, I don't know if I want to use that word, but it was a very strict approach to a very hard-nosed approach to coaching? Do you think there's...
I don't believe that works these days. I think back in the day, maybe it did, because people didn't know there was another approach in those days, and it did work. Fear was a factor. But I think over the last 30 years, people have learned that motivation and positive roles and visualizing and learning relationships with your players and with your coach and with the staff is a much more positive way to get a team motivated towards a common goal where you're all working for each other. So
you talk a lot about relationship, team building things. So far, I haven't heard you say very much about basketball itself.
That's very true. Yeah. With basketball, it's a tool. It's a tool that allows you to develop athletes or students, whatever you're doing, to become themselves, to learn how to be functioning people in society. And these are all skills that are all around basketball. And of course, there's all these, the preseason weight training and the drills and the skills and the playmaking and the handling yourself on the court. That's all part of basketball. But ultimately, all those factors are going to be heightened to a very high level if you have a foundation of relationship with these players. So I spend time with my players as well, off the court, learning who they are. Learning who their families are, how many kids are in their family, if they're the youngest, the oldest, do they have one parent or two, and knowing, okay, this is what motivates them, this is what their stresses are that they're bringing to school, what they're bringing to the court. Let's try and use that to motivate them to work with their others and get our ultimate goal is to build a championship team.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Steve, for your time, and continue building fantastic basketball programs and building relationship with students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So, with the interview with Steve, he touched on a lot of issues with relationship, of course, with students, and talking about team building, but he touched on a lot of things that paralleled what Carolyn Shields and Mark Edwards talked about in their book, Dialogue is Not Just Talk. And one of the things they did talk about was this commitment. I guess they didn't talk about athletes per se, but more about students. But I think it can be used at the same context. They talked about commitment, and I would use athletes in substitution with students, but they're committed to knowing athletes as people. And I think what Steve talked about a lot was this connection or commitment to knowing them as people, not as objects. And I think the book talks about also that often we behave in ways that lead to the objectification of other human beings as if they were objects, things that need to be filled, or where the teacher teaches and the student is supposed to learn. And same thing with coaching. A lot of coaches have this dictatorship. The first coach he talked about had this strict, hard-nosed approach in saying, this is how it is, and this is what you need to learn. And instead, building these, being committed to them and building relationship. I think it's very essential to what he was talking about, and what this book talks about is essential to dialogue and relationship being one of the pieces of the puzzle. The second thing is that Steve talked about not starting with self, but with others. He didn't really take on a very egoistic point of view. Yes, he is a very successful coach, winning lots of championships, but it didn't start with him. What it started with was the students or the athletes, and where they were. And he talked about learning about their background, learning about where they were, building and team building things where they brought together the whole from where they were, and that's where understanding came about. And this relationship in the book talks about it doesn't occur very quickly. It occurs slowly, and when this occurs, it's created, nurtured, and developed. When this happens, there's openness, and Steve touched on this as well, where he built trust. And I think these are some of the backbone things of success in any sort of program, whether it be basketball, or he touched on choir, or any sort of program that students are involved with. And ultimately, this relationship is the first component of dialogue, and when dialogue can occur, many great things can happen.